There's a $20 job on your Harley that done wrong can quietly cost you $4,000. It's the primary fluid change. Riders do it right in the driveway. 20 minutes on the floor, one drain plug, 1 quart, the easiest service on the bike. But done wrong, that same afternoon can slip the clutch, cook the transmission, and turn into a 4-figure repair. Not always, not even usually, but it happens often enough that shops see it constantly. One of these mistakes does it more than any other, and I'll show you which one. First, let's look at the symptoms. Quick note before we start. Everything I'm about to walk you through, the fluids, the specs, the numbers, it's all laid out in the Harley Doctor handbook. There's a link in the description and a code on your screen if you want it. It's there when you need it. Back to the bike. Let's look at the symptoms. The clutch that used to grab clean now feels a little vague. You roll on the throttle hard, and for a second the revs climb faster than the bike does. On a long pull or 2 up or up a grade, it's worse. The clutch is slipping. It might come and go. Early on, it's subtle, easy to write off as the bike just being a bit tired. Your bike's been trying to tell you something, and this is how it starts. Here's the diagnosis. Almost every time a shop pulls the primary cover on a bike like this, they're looking for the same thing, and they often find it: the wrong oil in the primary. Usually car oil, regular automotive engine oil, poured in because it was on the shelf, or because somebody figured oil is oil. It isn't, not here. Your big twin runs a wet clutch. The clutch plates live right there in the primary, bathing in that fluid, and they're designed to grip through it. That only works if the fluid lets them grip. Motorcycle primary fluid is built for exactly that. Car oil is built for the opposite. Modern automotive oils are loaded with friction modifiers, additives whose whole job is to make surfaces slide past each other more easily, to cut friction and save fuel in an engine. Drop that into a primary, and those same modifiers coat your clutch plates and teach them to slip. The service data is clear on this, and shops see it constantly. It's one of the most common self-inflicted problems on these bikes. Now here's the reassuring half of that. Caught early, before the plates are cooked, the fix is often just this: drain the wrong fluid out, put the right fluid in, and give the clutch a chance to recover. The wrong oil doesn't ruin anything the first weekend. It's the slip you live with for a whole season that turns into a new clutch pack. Here's my prescription. Don't ever put automotive oil in your primary. What you want is a motorcycle-specific primary or chain case fluid that's rated for a wet clutch. On the bottle, that's the rating the industry calls JASO MA. It means no friction modifiers, safe for wet clutches. Harley sells its own for the big twins. They call it Formula Plus, and plenty of good motorcycle brands make an equivalent. I'll get to exactly how much and which spec in a minute, because that part depends on your model. For now, the rule is simple. Wet clutch-rated motorcycle fluid, yes. Car oil, never. So that's the big one. Car oil slips the clutch, and a slipping clutch is where the expensive story begins. Hold on to that, because we'll follow it all the way down before we're done. But car oil isn't the only way to get the fluid wrong. This next one is subtler, and it fools riders who actually know better. Let's look at the symptoms again, because this one hides better. The bike runs okay. The clutch mostly behaves. But maybe the shifts feel a hair notchier than they used to. Maybe there's a little more noise from the primary than you remember. A faint whir or clatter that wasn't there last season. Nothing screams. That's exactly what makes it sneaky. This one doesn't shout at you. It whispers. Here's the diagnosis. This is the rider who knows better than to use car oil, so they reach for something that sounds close. Transmission fluid maybe, because there's a transmission right there, or a heavier gear oil, or a primary fluid meant for a different model than the one in the garage. It's the right idea and the wrong bottle. On a Harley, the primary, the engine, and the transmission are not all asking for the same fluid, and it varies by model. On the big twins, the primary chain case has its own dedicated lubricant. The transmission next to it often takes something different. And go back far enough, the older Sportsters historically ran one oil shared across the engine, the transmission, and the primary. So there's no single magic weight that's correct for every Harley ever built. A fluid that's perfect in one machine's gearbox can be wrong in another machine's primary. And I get why the confusion happens. On a lot of these bikes, the transmission and the primary live in the same neighborhood. Right there behind the same side of the engine, both needing fluid, both easy to mix up if you're going by memory instead of the manual. The service data backs this up, and it's exactly why the shop's first question is never "what did you use?" It's "what bike is it?" Here's my prescription, and it's the commenter-proof one. Don't chase a universal weight because there isn't one. Open your model's service manual, find the primary chain case spec it actually calls for, and use a motorcycle-specific wet clutch-rated fluid in that spec. That's it. Your manual is the authority. Not the guy at the counter, not a forum, not me. The rating stays constant, wet clutch safe, Jasso May. The exact fluid and weight is whatever your book says for your machine. So the wrong fluid comes in two flavors: car oil that slips the clutch, and the right family in the wrong spec. Get both of those right and you've cleared the two biggest mistakes on the list. Which brings us to a quieter one. The kind that has nothing to do with which bottle you bought. And if this is the kind of straight, no-panic maintenance talk you've been looking for, consider subscribing. Think of it as booking your next checkup. I'm here every week and the goal is always the same: keep your bike healthy and your money in your pocket. Now back to the primary. Let's look at the symptoms. Two different bikes, two opposite complaints. The first one weeps a little oil. There's a film on the bottom of the primary cover, a drip on the floor after it sits. The second one runs hot around the clutch, feels a touch draggy when you pull the lever in at a stoplight, maybe a little rattly cold. One bike has too much fluid in the primary, the other doesn't have enough. Here's the diagnosis. The amount matters more than most riders think, and the window is narrower than you'd guess. Overfill the primary and the clutch and chain are churning through more fluid than they should, whipping it into foam, building pressure and heat, and pushing oil out past the seals. That's your leak. Underfill it, and the parts that are supposed to be bathed in fluid aren't fully covered. Now you've got extra heat, extra wear, and a clutch that isn't living in the bath it was designed for. On the big twins, the primary holds right around a quart. But hear the hedge in that. Right around a quart. For many models, and you confirm the exact figure for yours. This is one more place the manual earns its keep. And don't confuse this with your engine oil check. The primary has its own level, its own plug, its own procedure. Getting the engine oil level spot on tells you nothing about what's happening in the primary. Think of them as separate rooms in the same house. And here's what people miss. You don't set primary fluid by pouring in a measured quart and walking away. Most of these are set to a level, checked with the bike sitting the way the manual tells you, on level ground, with the right cover off or the right plug out, reading where the fluid actually sits. Pour by the jug alone and you're guessing. Here's my prescription. Fill to the level your manual specifies, not to a number in your head. Get the bike sitting how the book says. Check it the way the book says. And if you're caught between the marks, err toward the manual's line. Don't treat more as the safe direction. Overfilling is what starts the leak in the hot clutch in the first place. So, right fluid, right spec, right amount, 3 down. There's one more, and it's the most human of the 4. It comes down to how carefully you look at what the old fluid and the bike are handing you. Let's look at the symptoms one last time, and this time the symptom is something you can see if you slow down and look for it. It's in the old fluid you just drained. On a healthy primary, that fluid comes out dark and used, and that's normal. But sometimes it comes out with a shimmer to it, a fine metallic sparkle. Or worse, actual flakes and grit. Sometimes there's more coming out than went in, which means fluid was getting in from somewhere it shouldn't. Your bike's been trying to tell you, and it wrote the message in the drain pan. Here's the diagnosis, and it's really about attention. The primary job is simple, but it's sitting right next to parts that are not. There's the clutch, with its spring and its pack. There's the compensator, on the end of the crank, up front behind that cover. On a lot of these bikes, the compensator is a known wear point, and when it starts going, the primary is often the first place it shows up, in a new noise and in what ends up in that fluid. There's the primary chain too, and its tensioner. When people rush this job, a few things go wrong. They drain and fill and never once look at what came out. So the sparkle that was an early warning gets poured down the drain and forgotten. They see a little metal and tell themselves it's nothing, when a healthy primary shouldn't be shedding metal you can see. They notice the level creeping up between changes and ignore it, when rising fluid can mean a seal is letting engine oil migrate in. Or they get careless with the cover itself, the gasket, the bolts, the torque, and start a fresh leak on a bike that never had one. None of that is exotic. It's just what happens when a simple job gets treated as beneath your attention. And a little clutch drag or a little noise can be perfectly normal on these bikes. So I'm not telling you to panic at every sound. I'm telling you to look, so you can tell normal from a warning. Here's my prescription, and it costs you nothing but a few minutes. Every time you change that fluid, read it. Rub a little between your fingers. Look for shine and grit. Note roughly how much came out versus what you put in. If it's clean and the level's steady, wonderful. You just confirmed a healthy primary. If you see real metal or the level keeps climbing, that's your cue to look deeper before you ride. At the clutch, the compensator, the seals. That drain fluid is a free diagnostic report, and most people pour it out without ever reading it. So those are the 4. And before I show you exactly how far the first one can go, I want you to do something for me. It'll take 30 seconds. Think back to the last time your primary fluid got changed. Maybe you did it, maybe a shop did. Now answer 3 quiet questions. 1. Do you actually know what fluid went in? the brand, the spec, whether it was even motorcycle specific and wet clutch rated? 2. Was the level set to the manual or just poured from a jug? 3. Did anyone look at what drained out? If you can't answer those, you're not in trouble. You just found the most useful thing in this video. You know what to check next time. That's the whole point. Now let me close the loop I opened at the start, the $4,000 one. I told you a $20 job could get there. Here's exactly how, and here's what's actually happening inside the primary when the wrong fluid goes in. Go back to the first mistake, the car oil, the friction modifiers. Those modifiers coat the clutch plates and the clutch starts to slip. At first that slip is tiny, you barely feel it, but a slipping clutch is a clutch that's rubbing when it should be gripping, and rubbing makes heat. That heat cooks the fluid and glazes the plates, which makes them slip a little more, which makes a little more heat. It feeds itself. Left alone over enough miles, that clutch wears out early. That's the first repair, but the primary doesn't sit off by itself. It's bolted right up against the transmission, sharing that same neighborhood of heat and on some setups, contamination. Push a clutch that's overheating and shedding material long enough, and the damage doesn't stay in the clutch. It spreads to the transmission bolted right next to it. Now stack up the bill. A worn clutch on its own is a few hundred to a couple thousand, depending on the bike and the shop. But at the extreme, when the heat and the wear carry into the transmission and it takes the trans with it, the documented range for this kind of wrong fluid damage runs from around $2,000 to $5,000. $4,000 sits up at the severe end of that, the full cascade, clutch and transmission together. That's the four-figure repair from the hook. It gets there for one plain reason. A tiny, cheap mistake gets left alone to compound quietly mile after mile until it's taken two expensive things instead of none. The fluid isn't magic. It just never got caught in time. And I want to be honest with you about the odds. Most riders never get anywhere near that worst case because they don't leave a slipping clutch alone for years. They feel it, they check it, they fix it. So don't carry that four-figure number around like a threat over every oil change. It's just the ceiling. The most that neglect can cost, and I'm showing it to you so you never have to meet it. And here's the part that should make you feel better, not worse. A primary fluid change is around $20 in the driveway. Call it $14 to $30 for the fluid, maybe $75 to $200 if a shop does it. That tiny job is the whole defense. The catastrophe and the cure are the same afternoon. One just uses the right bottle, filled to the right level, with somebody paying attention. So let's total it up, the way I would if you were sitting across from me with the test results. Mistake 1, car oil in the primary. Its friction modifiers slip the wet clutch, and that slip is where the whole expensive story starts. Mistake 2, the right family of fluid in the wrong spec, transmission fluid, or the wrong weight, when the answer is whatever wet clutch rated fluid your model's manual actually calls for. Mistake 3, the wrong amount over or under, set by guesswork instead of the manual's level. And mistake 4, doing the job with your eyes closed, pouring out the early warning without ever reading it. Every one of those is avoidable. None of them needs a lift, a dealer, or a dime beyond the fluid. What they need is that you treat the easiest service on the bike with the same respect you'd give the hardest. The strange thing about the primary is that it never really goes quiet. There's always a signal in there somewhere, if you know how to read it. The vague clutch, the new whir, the film on the cover, the shine in the drain pan. Your bike's been trying to tell you the whole time. All it's asking is that you listen and that you pour the right thing back in. If you want the full reference, every model's spec, every capacity, every number I mentioned, it's in the Harley Doctor handbook. There's a link in the description at harleydoctor.shop. Ride safe, and I'll see you at the next checkup.